next couple minutes, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining. My name is Will Berner. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at LogRocket, and I am super excited for today's presentation. While I'm not a PM, I do have to prioritize a lot of projects all the time, so I'm excited to learn today. And with that, I'll pass it over to Moshe Mikanovsky.
Thank you so much, Will, and thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be here today and share some of the tips for product prioritization. This is actually a webinar that I developed a few years ago, and I've given it a few times. And over the years, I added and changed and modified a bit. So it's also a product on its own. So it's always good to see how these things are actually evolving. So let's dive right into it. You should be able to see my screen. First of all, let me introduce myself quickly. 4 facts about who I am. So I was originally born in Israel. This is beautiful Tel Aviv coast. I live in Toronto right now. I've been here for over 20 years. I started as a software developer. So for the first 20 years of my career, I was actually a software developer, working in many different positions, mainly in startups. I was a CTO of a startup here in Toronto. This is the first computer that I was developing on. So if you are familiar with the digital VAX computers, it might age me. So you might know how old I am based on that. In the past 14 years, I've been doing product management. So I moved from engineering to product management because that was the one core thing about building products that I really love. These are some of the companies and some of the clients that I build products for. So at Points International, I build products for loyalty programs like Alitalia's and Virgin Atlantic. I worked with a few banks here in Canada when I worked at Procom for different things related to recruitment and a few other clients. These days, I'm a product director at Root Quotient. This is a company that we're building innovative products for other startup growth and enterprises. I also teach at Schulich School of Business here in York University. I am really excited because I'm going to teach next fall design thinking. So it's a new course that I'm designing. I have also an initiative that is called Products for Good, where we build a product for search efforts of missing person. So this is more of a volunteering thing that I'm doing. And a couple of podcasts that I host. The first one is Product for Product, where we talk about products that product people are using. And beyond product, I do it with Root Quotient, where we talk with founders about their journeys to build products and build their companies. And I am also a published author, not about product management. It's a fiction, but that was also an interesting experience for me to build a book like a product. So I'm really like a product person through and through. So let's start with our tips, because today we wanted to go over my top 10 tips related to how do I prioritize. And you might think that the first tip is to know how to prioritize or to have a prioritization mechanism, but it's not really the first one. It will come later on, but it's not the most important thing, in my mind at least. The first tip is identify your product vision. So without having a product vision, we can't really continue with anything. And once we have the product vision, we can then have strategies. We can then have ideas that fit the strategy or don't fit the strategy, fit the vision or don't. And therefore, it will be much easier for us to prioritize. So the first thing really is to identify the product vision. So here we're thinking about long-term, like 5 years or more. Think big and inspiring. It should really derive from the company's vision. So usually a product vision does not stand on its own. It's usually coming from the company's vision. So if you don't know what the company vision, go and ask, go and see what is it the vision exactly of the entire organization. And then really the vision there is the users. Like what what do you need to focus on to be successful and create value for those users? Now, I got some resources for you throughout this presentation, and don't worry, I have at the end a method for you to get all these slides and all of these resources. So I will share that with you at the end. So you will have all the resources available throughout the slides. But this for the vision, I really like this couple of people that have put frameworks or canvases for creating a product vision. The first one is Roman Pickler. The second one is Radhika Dutt. They're very similar and have their own small differences over there. But if you are not, if you don't know how to create a product vision or how to think a product vision, go check those resources. Very easy to go to follow through. But to create a product vision, it's not enough. You also have to share it with everyone. And there are different ways to share that. The best ways to share it is to create something visual that people really will resonate with them. It will tell a story. It will create a flow there of what is the problem and what is the real solution we can create. Why can we be the heroes in this story? So one way to do it is with a vision type. And a vision type, it's similar to a prototype, but it's more about the future. So imagine you are 5 years from now and everything is possible. What is it that you could create to make that happen? So you do that as a prototype that really take the person to the future. A storyboard is another way to do that, where you actually tell a story through pictures or something like that. And I've done it myself several times before, but these days it's even easier to do. If you have a designer in your organization, just collaborate with them to create this vision type or the storyboard. They will have great ideas about how to present these things and therefore help people to really get into that vision. I also use Gen AI to create short videos. So there are tools these days, for creating text and creating images and creating videos. There are actually, some of them are pretty good that can help you save a lot of time. And you can create things that are, 30 seconds, 60 seconds that can convey a lot of things in there. If you're interested, I can also reach out to me. I can share with you some of those as well. Okay, so tip number 2, define the strategy. So once you have the vision, you still don't have enough information over there to identify what are the priorities to develop. So you have to define a strategy first. And the strategy is really, how do you get to this vision? And there could be multiple strategies. Now, I'm not going to go through all the strategies that you can have. That could be a whole webinar by itself. But in general, if you are following people like Marty Kagan or Gibson Biddle, they have really talked a lot about product strategy. And especially Gibson, I have here a link. He was the head of product at Netflix. So he had a lot of experience there with strategy. And it's Netflix, we know, had amazing strategy, and they were very successful with that. And in this series of articles that he have on LinkedIn, he actually laid down a whole method and many different ways to create a strategy. So really, it's really important to first have your vision, and only then the strategy, and only then you might be able to start prioritizing. Okay, now we're at tip number 3. Look at quantitative data. So we know that in order to prioritize things, we really need to have understanding of the reality, understanding of what are real and what is not real. So data should be king over here. So the tip over here is to really look at what quantitative data we have that can direct us into proving or disproving specific things, and therefore we can prioritize them over other things. So you can collect a lot of data, data from your system, from your product, user data that you're collecting, like through surveys, NPS, user activity. You can collect KPIs or define your KPIs and then collect them for your product. So, a few action items for you to do. First of all, assess the data if you can. So have access to the data. Some of us in product, we can have access to the database. We might know how to do SQL and select specific data from our databases. We might have access to other tools that give us different reports or whatever it is. So see how much data you can access to. You can also partner with your BI if you have a BI on your team, or data scientist, or anyone that actually have a good grasp of the data and understanding about how to squeeze information from the data. That's always a good partnership to have over there. And then, of course, you can use tools like LogRocket or Mixpanel that are integrated with your system, collect the data, and then give you information, insights from the data. And for anything that you want to prioritize, see, what is the data telling you there? If we talked about quantitative data in number 3, tip number 4 is about qualitative data. So that's the data that has more quality into it, but maybe it doesn't come in volumes like the qualitative data. And it usually comes in the way of comments from whatever people are saying. People are talking about your products, about the features, about what they like, what they don't like about the product. Pay attention to that. So this can come from user interviews. It can come from surveying using open questions. It can come from usability testing that you do with the users. It can come from feedback that anyone in your organization is getting. Things like customer support, success, salespeople. So don't disconnect from other departments in your organization. On the contrary, connect with them on a regular basis to see what the users and the clients they're talking with are saying on a regular basis. So here, because the data is less structured than quantitative data, you want to have abilities to collect this data and then systemize it. So how do you put everything together in a way that will give you insights into what works, what doesn't work, where do you need to put more prioritization, what risks you have, etc. Luckily for us these days, again, you can use AI to drive insights. So there are tools, again, that are helping you with that. Now, with this, I wanted to have a shout out here for LogRocket. So, Will, if you may.
Thanks, Moshe. And yeah, so I guess while we're speaking about qualitative data, it's a good segue. Another form of that can be session replay, which is essentially video recordings of your users navigating your web and mobile applications. And today's webinar is brought to you by LogRocket, which is an AI-first session replay and product analytics solution. And so some of you might be thinking, I've used session replay before. It can be a bit time consuming and tedious to find interesting things to look at. That has traditionally been true. It might have required an analyst or even a team of people to manually watch user experiences and find meaningful insights. But our new Galileo AI solution is designed to remove that manual work by automatically watching sessions for you and proactively identifying critical issues in the user experience. It'll then explain them to you in plain language, such as user encounters a slow page and isn't able to add an item to the cart, or something of the likes. And one quick example, our customer MGM Resorts received an alert where the contents of the user's cart was failing to properly display on the page. So with the analytics and LogRocket, they were able to see that hundreds of sessions per hour were being impacted. And by reviewing the corresponding session replays, so that qualitative data, they could see this was indeed a very severe issue that needed to be immediately prioritized. And so that's all for me. I'll pass it back over to Moshe. One thing I forgot to mention, feel free to drop your questions in the QA module or the chat throughout. We'll have some time at the end to go through those. So thanks, everyone, and back over to Moshe.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Will. Yeah, so tools like that, like LogRocket, could really help us with collecting data and synthesize it and helping with highlighting insights like that. I can tell you, I'm working in the industry for over 30 years, and the past 5 years working with products like that is like heaven. You could not do anything like that in the past. So it's definitely a great time for all of us building digital products. Okay, so next is tip number 5. And tip number 5 is to get stakeholders buy-in. Many times, the tension that we have with prioritization is not so much about which is really higher priority or not, but it's more about what different people in the organization really want us to do. And there is a lot of point of views. Everyone has their job to be done. They have the things that they care about and important for them. And when they see that we're not prioritizing their items, they can get upset. And this is where the tension is coming in. So really get stakeholders buy-in. It's not just about explaining to them why, how we prioritize and stuff like that, although it's very important. But it's also start as in creating relationship with them. So socialize with them outside of work meetings to create a more personal relationship. And you get to understand them more, they get to understand you more. Keep them in the loop regularly so they understand what is it that you're doing, why you're doing it. Show them the data. The data, as we said, is king, but it has to be to really support your decisions and why we're doing these things. Show them how product decisions are aligning with the organization vision and strategy. And this is another importance for why we start with the vision and the strategy, because once everyone is aligned with that, it's much easier discussion to say, this specific feature does not align with our strategy, therefore it is lower priority. If they all agree to the same vision and to the same strategy, it should be quite easy to show where things align and when they don't align. Tip number 6, identify where the highest risk is. So if you're familiar with Marty Kagan's work, he's one of the principals of the Silicon Valley product group. And he wrote several books about product management and like Inspired and Empowered and Recently Transformed. And he breaks it down to 4 risks when you build a product. The first one is the value risk. Are we creating any value to our users? The second one is usability risk. Can the user understand it and use it? The third one is feasibility. Can we build it? Do we have the technology? Do we know how to build it? Is it really feasible for us? And the third one is viability risk, which is for the organization. Are we creating value to the organization that is also sustainable and we can have an ROI for that? Now, if we don't know where the risks are, what is the highest risks, we may not know what do we have to prioritize first. So prioritization really will go towards understanding those risks. Now, to help with that, we developed at Root Quotient what we call the product risk radar. And I was talking about that last month at Founder Institute. So I have for you here a link to the YouTube of that, so you can listen to that. You see, it's a very long discussion over there. But what we have done is we put these 4 risks into what we call the risk radar, that each one of those quadrants identify the specific risk, value, viability, usability, and feasibility, and then give you specific directions about how to assess it based on the evidence that you have. So how much evidence you have to specific areas in each one of those. And when you look at that, you will see where the highest risk, and you will want to resolve the highest risk first. So you will prioritize things that are more risky to try to resolve them so the risk will be reduced. Again, if you're interested in that, watch that webinar. And there is also a book, an ebook that we created to help you plot this radar for your own product. Tip number 7, align user journeys with technical components. So what that means is that we sometimes are working about our user journey. We know what are the journey that users needs to do, etc. And then we need to build a product that will resolve that. What we sometimes forget to do is really align them together, which basically means if this is the user journey that I have to do, these are all the different technical things I have to build to make that happen. When we align them together, what will actually happen is that we might be able to see what is the critical path for the user journey, what is maybe the MVP when we start, eventually what are the areas that we want to improve on, and then we can see how are we doing with actually fulfilling that through our product technical stack. And when I'm saying technical stack, I don't mean specifically our engineering stack, like which language to develop it and where to host it and stuff like that. I'm talking more about the specific component in the architecture of our product that will make this entire thing complete. So to give you an example, this is an example that I put together for Airbnb, where you have the flow on the top of the user journey, both of the hosts and the visitors. And it goes through a specific journey. This is very detailed. I'm not going to go through the details over here. But then below that, there is different components like user registration, user management, searches of creation of homes for staying, searches of homes, applying to stay in a home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So each one of those components is like a discrete item in my stack. And when I align them all together, I can see which one of them actually is already built. Some of them I might not build myself. Maybe I will buy a specific component like an API or integration with a third-party service or stuff like that. Some of it I will decide I'm not going to build right now. But if there is a glaring gap in the middle, they will not be able to fulfill the full flow of that. So this is a very useful tool to really highlight what do we have and what are missing, and therefore, how do we prioritize that? Now, a little mention over here, I do workshops for how to define this diagram. So if you're interested, again, you can contact me. I have on my website a way to register to that. Tip number 8, learn different ways to prioritize. So here, finally, I got to how do we actually prioritize, and we should know ways to prioritize. As I said before, it's not the most important thing, although it's really important to know how to prioritize. And there are many different ways to do that. So some of you might have been familiar with some of these, like the Kano model, Moscow, value versus risk, value versus cost. It's not one prioritization fit all. It really fits your situation. So the first thing is you should really learn what they are. And for you to learn them, there is a great resource for that. I think this is the best one I found, and I've used it for years to learn about those prioritization. I always go back to that. It's by Daniel Zacharias, and his website is called Folding Burritos, which is an awesome name. I really like that. So this is I have the link for you here, and he created this the periodic table of the prioritization techniques. So it's really cool how he set it up. He explained each one of them in lots of details. So if you want to learn about any of those and any additional ones that he has here, check out his site. Okay. Tip number 9. Tip number 9 is experiment. So like anything else in product, we are experimenting, which problem to solve. We're experimenting what's the right solution to solve it. The same thing with that, experiment also prioritization techniques. So try different techniques, see which techniques actually work for you best. And then when you look into different product ideas and different product solution, you still want to experiment them based on whatever data that you have, whatever hypothesis that you have, whatever the users that you're testing it with are telling you. So don't always just come with one solution and say this is the only solution, because it might not be the right solution. To experiment, the best resource that I've seen so far is this book by Strategizer, Testing Business Ideas. It has a lot of methods of testing, how to test different ideas in a cheap way, doing the specific prototypes or specific tests that look real, but they're not real, things like that. You might be familiar with some of them. This is a really cool book by David Bland and Alexander Osterwalder. So I really recommend you to check it out. And last tip, tip number 10 is prioritize all the time. So you don't want to prioritize one time and that's it. It's like you don't want to create one roadmap based on your prioritization and say, this is a roadmap and we don't change that. You really have to do it on a regular basis. And I would prioritize, our daily activities. So everything we do on a daily basis, hypotheses and experiments to test them, the features and requests that comes in, our long-term roadmap. And when things don't work, you just pivot. So you see, what works, what not. You pivot things around, and you're in better way to success. So these were my top 10 tips on prioritization. What I wonder now, and if you may put it in the comments, I would love you to share with us what would be your tip number 11, because I'm sure there are other tips out there. As I mentioned, I actually changed this presentation over time. So I had some tips that I took out and replaced them with some other tips. I would wonder what people here on the session think. What would be number 11? And Will, if you have also a suggestion, please do write in the comments. Anyone? Okay, let's see. Always think through the mindset of the customer. That's right. So put yourself in the shoes. So empathy towards the customers, right? Um, customer high MRR. Okay, who's that? Carlos. Do you want to explain a bit more? So if you have higher MRR, then you want to prioritize towards their requirements. Is that what you mean? Okay. Okay, that's a good tip there. I mean, it really depends. If it is aligned with your company strategy, then for sure. But if you have a client that they are like your cash cow, but your company strategy goes in a very different direction, you might want to rethink that sometimes, right? Thank you, Carlos, for that. Anyone else? I did hear in the past a lot of people talking about empathy for sure. So have create that empathy, be empathized to your users. So that's also aligned with what you said, Will. Here, Anthony said, have strong measurable KPIs to help you decide when to pivot. Absolutely. So the other side of strategy is to define what success looks like. And when you define what success looks like, you define those KPIs and you want to measure them with this qualitative and quantitative data. And only then you can actually see are you successful or not, and whether you need to pivot or not. Thank you, Anthony. That's a very good point there. Anyone else want to add their tip number 11? Or a favorite prioritization method that they might have? No? Okay. So as I mentioned, you can scan this QR code. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I have just mentioned where you come from because I get connection requests from many places. So I would love to know you came from this webinar. And I have more links available in the QR code over here. Now, like I mentioned before, I would love to get, I would love to share with you the PDF. So for that, I would also love to have feedback from everyone about this presentation and whether this gave you value and how I can improve it in the future. So if you don't mind taking your phones and scanning this QR code, it will already take you to this URL with the code product. And then it will ask you a few questions, to give feedback about the webinar. And then at the end, when you're done with that, it will send you the PDF of the presentation with all the resources that I share over there. So I hope it's okay, for you to do that now. I can give you maybe 30 seconds or a minute to do that. And while we wait for that, I don't know if anyone shared any questions.
I actually have one from my team, Moshe. So you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, maybe let people maybe do the scan this so they don't miss that. And maybe what we can do is after everyone or when people are done, if you just say in the chat, just done, so we can continue. And also feel free to put your questions for the Q&A. I'll just wait another 20 seconds if that's okay. Okay, you want to share the question, Will?
Yeah, so you mentioned at the beginning thinking longer term, thinking about your, 5-year vision. So curious how you kind of approach that if you're in an environment where there's pressure to demonstrate shorter term results, like for example, a venture backed early stage startup, a series A, series B type company where you have to also answer to your investors.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is definitely a short term and a long term that you have to go by. Every company has to have that, whether you are with the pressure to perform and show results, or also big enterprises that still they have shareholders or whatever it is, right? So I would say the vision is the one that drives your strategy, and the strategy is the one that will drive how you will do the short term, because in order to get to that vision, you have to break it down. So vision for 5 years is good, but you cannot really actionize on it, or you can create a strategy, just for the end result. You have to say we're going to start over here, and that's how we are going to get to that vision. That strategy will create the roadmap, what you're doing right now, and what you're doing right now might eventually change the strategy over time and might change the vision over time. So it's not set in stone that your vision, if you decided today in 5 years we're going to do X, if you found things over time and you decided to pivot, you might change your vision. If the vision is big enough, it might still fit. If the vision is to go to a different sector or try something completely different, you might change everything. An example for that is Slack. If you know the story of Slack, they started as a game developers, and they built their in-house this tool to help them communicate. And then eventually they dropped the vision of developing games, and they just focused on Slack for communication, which is a completely different vision. But that's what happened over time. Now, their strategy might not have said specifically, we need to build a product that will help us in communication. But over time, they found out that, and I'm not sure all the details of the story, but they found out maybe that, there is not enough work for them to build games, or whatever games they built were not good enough. I don't know exactly the details. Maybe someone else here knows the story a bit better. But they have a very strong internal product that they decide to change their entire vision towards that. So you definitely want to have also short-term strategy, which creates the short-term results that you need to show. Does
Cool.
that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. That was super helpful. And then
Mhm.
from one of our on-demand viewers, we had one submitted. How do you think about prioritizing stuff like stability and quality of life updates versus pursuing the longer term roadmap when you're working in a very lean product and R&D team?
So when you're saying stability, meaning like keep the lights on or making the um, current things work versus creating new things?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there is a balance between those things. So this is actually interesting enough, is one of the tips that I took out and replaced it with another tip. But I used to have one that it's a balance between keep the lights on, create a wow factor for users, and then move towards your strategy. So things that you have to do probably all of them to create maintain your quality, maintain your current users, etc. But you might also want to create bigger, scale your product to maybe bigger audience or whatever it is. So for that, you might need new features for that. But that's again following that strategy. So really, it is a balance between them. I would say that you might want to try different buckets to say we're going to prioritize maybe 30% for this, 30% for that, 40% for this. Sometimes you will. It depends also on how your the development and product team are working. You might have tech debt that you will need to prioritize sometimes. So just make sure that if there is a risk there, you don't drop it. So the risks are sometimes will create more weight to some of those buckets.
Cool. I think that makes sense. And then a question just came in from Anthony. How do you decide when to pull the plug on a feature that isn't hitting its KPIs?
Yeah, that's good questions like anything else. I think that over time, if you do different experiments and you see none of them are working, there is a stage that you will have that understanding that things are not really working that way. So I had many situations where we try something and then there was no traction to it, and we decided not to drop it yet, but to try it in different other ways. Sometimes it's about the location of the feature, how people find out about this feature, how they learn about this feature. The most important thing is to see if you can try these things fast and fail fast so you can get to those success. But you don't want to fail all the time, of course. I don't necessarily have a specific rule of thumb to say try X number of times and therefore you have to pivot. But I think you will see the efforts you're putting onto it is already way too much compared to the value that you're going to get from that. And maybe that's the measurement there you can put together. Great question.
Cool. Thank you. And then do we have any other questions from the chat? I think we got through all the ones that were in the queue here. Give it maybe 30 seconds in case anyone has more.
Sure. Yeah. I think we have a few more minutes for this call. If people want to stay, hang around, and say hi, I'm always happy to connect with people. And if anyone has any other tips for prioritization, please do share them with me. Who knows, I might update it in the future for future presentations and would love to hear from you.
I like to use one, Moshe. It's like I forget what the framework is called, but it's essentially an effort versus impact calculation. You give each project a 1
Mhm.
through X, I think 1 through 5 for effort
Mhm.
versus potential impact. Is that one that you've dabbled with?
Yeah, I did. Sometimes it's a bit more complex than that, and I've gone through quite a bit of scenarios where one thing makes sense and then you're like, oh, maybe we doesn't cover these options, and another one makes sense and it doesn't cover these options. So actually, if you have multiple way to prioritize and then you overlap them, sometimes you will find actually even better ways to see what surface in both of them. because you might, the impacts versus effort is one of those things that might surface one things, but if you look at other things like risks versus effort, then it might surface different things. But if something is surfaced as high priority for both of them, then you have, double indicators or signals that you should probably work on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does sometimes feel like too. It's a bit arbitrary assigning the impact score when you're not actually certain what that impact will be. It's kind of an
Mhm.
assumption.
Yeah, and that's where you want to build like hypotheses sometimes and test them with real data to understand what might be the real impact there.
Cool. Well, I guess maybe we could wrap it. Oh, wait, we got another question from Carlos. Okay, let's go.
Oh,
So, Carlos would like to know for startups, should you prioritize focusing on strong product development, considering you are new in the market, nobody knows you yet?
yeah. So when you're saying strong product development, I guess you mean like prioritize developing your software quickly rather than I guess that's what you were asking there, right? Rather than so you have a product and you can come quickly to the market or be the first one to the market or something like that. So it's a good question because some founders have this notion that they have to build everything upfront and create something and don't tell anyone about it, so they're in stealth for forever. Let's say 6 months in stealth, and then all of a sudden they announce it and they have a full product that everyone can use already. The problem there could be is that if they didn't test anything before and they don't really have good indications that what they're building is going to work, they may not have people using it. So they will build like this amazing store and then no one will show up. So you don't want to get to that. So the idea of prioritization there is really um, not necessarily prioritizing the software development, but prioritizing what is the highest risk that I have right now to fail. If the highest risk that I have to fail is that I don't know if people will use it, I want to prioritize first, how do I test this? So do I create some prototypes and take them to real users and test it with them? Do I create an MVP? And an MVP is not like the first release product that have all the first release features. MVP is really I put together a few things, maybe not by developing anything, but by some no-code products that are available out there or some platforms available out there, and I'm testing my hypothesis that this is a viable business and people will actually want to use that. So to answer your question, Carlos, it's really, if you have this type of validation, then you can go ahead and spend time and money on development. But if you don't have this validation, I would prioritize first doing experiments in a cheaper way that will give you the real data to prioritize the development.
Cool. Thank you.
Amazing. You're welcome, Carlos.
Perfect. Any last questions? Well, it looks like we're right on time.
Amazing.
It's perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, Moshe. Everyone, stay tuned. We'll be sending out an email shortly after we wrap up here with a few links. We'll send the recording and a couple other resources for everyone as well. But thanks again, Moshe, and hope you and the rest of the crowd, everyone has a great day and a great week here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for opportunity to be a part of the Log Rocket webinar.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.